WZRD Chicago, 88.3 FM, The Wizard, Chicago's home for freeform since 1974. You're listening to David Gans here on The Wizard, doing a little deal for you. And we're really excited to be able to interview him along with Bill Lemke, both of which are in town tonight at Garcia's to promote their brand new book, Aging Gratefully. How's it going, guys?
It's
Good.
Thank you so much for having us. I
You're so,
appreciate it. And I see
so
you dressed for the occasion.
Yeah.
I did. Yeah, my sister made this for me. I can't believe it. It's a beautiful thing, huh?
That's very nice. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you. Yeah, we're playing at
nothing.
Garcia's tonight and going to be selling this wonderful book that I had the great privilege of doing with Bill.
That is wonderful. And you were photographed for this book, right, Dave?
No, no, Bill started doing this. Well, I'll let you tell his story and then that he'll tell you when I came on board, but you
Okay,
should
that
start with
sounds
him.
good.
So I started the project back in the 80s after I went to my first Grateful Dead show and realized how interesting the audience was. And I felt like I had this need to document the culture. And so I thought about it for several years. And I think 1988, I started making my first photographs. And I would set up in the parking lot at Alpine Valley or at Chicago Rosemont Horizon. And I would have a portable studio and just start photographing people, not knowing really what I was going to do with the project other than document. So negative sat for years and years, and I got a call from one of the people I photographed, and his daughter had grown up and moved to Chicago, and he said, "Hey, can you send me another print? She would love to have her own version." So I did, and he asked if I was interested in coming to Chicago to rephotograph him with his daughter, and I said, "Yeah, that would be great." And that kind of started the project about 10 years ago. And so my wife, Carmen, was able to post stuff online, and we found about 40 people over the next 10 years. And then at that point, it's like, we need some stories to go with this, and how are we going to go about that? I'm not a writer. And Carmen sent a message off to David wondering if we would hear back or not, and he jumped on board immediately, which was well, really exciting because at that point, now it's a book. It's no longer just an idea.
Well, when he told me what the concept was, or when Carmen told me what the concept was, I fell in love with it immediately. I mean, I've been an oral historian for 50 years and a deadhead for 50 years. And so it was just a perfect project for me. And they sent me a few samples, these pairs of images of deadheads taken, 30 years apart. It's fascinating. We sent you a couple of them. I guess you can put them up on your webpage or whatever. But
Yeah.
these are my people. This is my tribe. So it was like a really joyous project to call these people up. And we did this. We got on a Zoom, and I would say, tell me about the person in the photo on the left. And then how did you become the person on the photo on the right? And I just got all these wonderful stories from people. And the thing is, the Grateful Dead inspired the creativity of zillions of other human beings, Bill and I among them. I mean, my life changed when I got interested in the Grateful Dead. It completely reinvented who I am as a musician. And then I got interested in documenting that world and became an oral historian in that world. And so it was like a perfect project for me. And the people in the pictures all had wonderful stories because their creativity was fired up by the Grateful Dead too. I mean, clearly it's not a total cross section of that culture because there were a lot of burnouts in that world and people that sort of didn't make it through. So we're talking to the people that lived long enough to be in the book,
Yeah.
but also people who it's just clear that the Grateful Dead fired up their own creativity too. There's this couple that made Jerry dolls and sold them on tour for years, and hearing their stories and who they were together and separately and stuff and how that all worked, it was just delightful. And a pair of twins from Iowa who talked to me about how they were as kids going to the shows and how they brought that feeling of community and creativity forward in their lives. And one of them runs a dance school now, and the other's a musician and stuff. So it's all these really, really sweet stories of deadheads who crossed Bill's path, by accident in the 80s and who stuck around long enough to be part of the follow up too. It's just a wonderful, wonderful project.
It really seems very wonderful. I'm excited from the photos you guys sent. It's really cool to see the evolution of anything over time. So
Mhm.
to see the way that you're photographing these people in the same kind of way,
Yeah.
maybe the same pose, maybe holding the same puppet, maybe
Sometimes
holding.
in the same shirt.
Yes,
Yes,
often.
no way. They really still have some of these same outfits and same clothes.
I was photographed by my friend in the same setting, and I got rephotographed, and I had the same T-shirt to wear in both photographs.
That is amazing. True Deadhead style. We still have it somewhere, in the
Oh yeah.
drawer.
Absolutely, yeah.
And when the twins, they actually came here to be rephotographed, and Milwaukee PBS was here for that, and they
Oh,
filmed it. So on my website is a 9 minute video of the whole ordeal where I'm setting up my view camera to photograph them the same way I did, 35 years ago.
that is incredible. That's seriously incredible. And you're a Wisconsin, I don't know, native, but that's where you live currently and have for a
Yeah.
while, right?
Yeah, I've moved 12 miles in my life so far.
Nice. That's awesome. True to home. And how do I say where you live? Because there's controversy here in Chicago. Is it Waukesha? Sometimes you want to be like, hey, Waukesha, but I think it's Waukesha.
Waukesha.
Okay. I love it.
The home of Les Paul.
That's true. Okay, that makes sense. And you must be at home with your beautiful photos behind you.
I am. We're
Very
down
cool.
in my basement where I have my studio. I have a dark room yet. I still print from film the old way.
I was
He's
gonna ask.
I have to tell you, I am currently absolutely in love with the photo that he has on his wall here. Bill took a picture of a pyramid in Egypt. He was on the top of the Great Pyramid, and he took a photo of one of the other pyramids from above, and it's just a mind-blowing photo, and it's incredible detail. And you've seen these photos of the pyramids in Egypt, and you heard, we nobody really knows how they were done, and slaves must have dragged blocks of stone forever. And you look at it and you go, this is like 100 times more complicated, amazing, and bizarre and impossible than we ever conceived. And I just can't stop looking at it. And I'm going to buy a print from him because I love it so much.
Ah, that's
So
amazing.
his Grateful Dead stuff is just a small part of Bill's work. He's got amazing photos of nature and geology and stuff around here. And it's a really great thing that they reached out to me. We just clicked immediately, and working on this project has been a delight. And now I'm a huge fan of his other work. Turns out we're also huge fans of Utah and hiking in Utah and photographing in Utah and stuff. So we just sort of became fast friends off the bat here.
Well, what's funny is we met over Zoom while working on this project, and it wasn't until last Friday that we actually met in person.
That's right.
No way. And now
Yeah,
you're in his home drinking coffee together, doing a Zoom here.
absolutely.
That's right. And playing at Garcia's tonight. We should talk about this gig. I have played in Chicago a number of times over the years, and I've met some terrific musicians. And so when I was offered this opportunity to come and do the book party at Garcia's, I called a couple of my favorite musicians. And so I have a little pickup band tonight that I'm really excited about. Janice Wallen on bass, Joe Day on the keys, both from the Family Groove Company, and a drummer I've never met before, Jonathan Reed. So I'm looking forward, and they've been working on my tunes and stuff. So I'm really looking forward to getting to play with some great local musicians as part of this thing tonight. And we're going to be selling and signing books at Garcia's too. So that's one of the reasons we're happy to be talking to you this afternoon so that we can be promoting our event tonight.
Absolutely. The names that you mentioned, Janice, Joe, and John, all very, very good musicians and play here with us for a lot of different bands. Like Jonathan Reed is like the drummer for everyone, and he
Oh,
can do
good.
all the things. Every band you want to do, he can do it. He could play the two parts of, Billy and Mickey. He's in every band, I swear, and he's great. So, and Janice, I call her Ballin' Wallin. When she came in to interview, she said, "That's how you remember my last name. I'm Ballin' Wallin."
Yeah.
And
Well, I had such a good
also,
time playing with Janice and Joe a few years ago that it was a no-brainer to call them, and I figured if they were bringing Jonathan Reed in that he was going to be the right guy for the job. So I'm totally psyched to be playing with them tonight. And
that's
I'm
awesome.
all warmed up. I had an amazing gig. We did an event at a brew pub, Amorphic Brewing in Milwaukee, and I met a bunch of local musicians up there and had a great jam with them. And I
Wow.
played a house concert in Spring Grove last night at a dear friend's house, and I got to play with a bunch of his local friends too. So I'm totally fired up as a musician for tonight
Yeah.
and as Bill's co-author to get to promote this fabulous book.
This is such a cool opportunity and a cool event to be able to do both the book promotion and some music in a brand new Jerry Garcia themed venue, nonetheless. I'm sure you guys have been familiar with other Pete Shapiro endeavors like Brooklyn Bowl and the Capitol Theater. Uh,
Yes.
we are so grateful to have this venue here in Chicago, and it's been about 7 months or so, and just quality acts are coming in every couple days. We have something great here, and I'm so glad you guys get to be a part of it.
Thrilled to
Yeah.
be part of it, and they told us we're the first book party that they've had at Garcia's, so I'm happy to be a groundbreaker in that respect as well.
We're going to set the bar.
You are going to set the bar, absolutely. So the books will be on site. They're printed, they're published, they're ready to go.
Yes, in fact, part of the reason I'm here, we planned all of this around the arrival of the books, and there was a glitch in the printing that almost
Oh
ruined
no,
our schedule. They had to print them again. But
no.
the truck arrived. He showed me the amazingly twisty driveway that the truck had to back up in order to deliver the books. And there's like
Oh,
4 pallets of books there, and we have to sign them all before I go home on Thursday. So we
man.
signed about 200 of them yesterday. Took a bunch to the gig last night. We're gonna Tom Fritz, who's contributed some other photos to the event. He's coming over today. We're gonna sign some more books. And then we're doing a house concert here tomorrow night, and then Wednesday we have nothing else to do before I go home. So we're going to spend the entire day signing all the other books. So we will have signed 1,500 books by the time I go home on Thursday.
Wow, that's a huge endeavor and so cool of you guys to do. Very,
It
very cool.
truly, it's just a joyous experience, and
Hey, Carl,
even the
go grab a book.
signing of all those books is not going to be a chore. It's going to be a pleasure.
Yeah.
It's got to feel good to put that stamp on it after all the hard work that you've put into it,
Yeah.
right, Bill?
And I got to say too, there was an issue with the printer, but the printer came through. They did a great job. They delivered on time, despite the little issue we had. They stood behind their work, and it shows. They did a great job on the book. So
That's wonderful. How do you go about finding a publisher if you're somebody who wants to put out a book and that's kind of a difficult feat sometimes, right?
We didn't.
we are publishers now.
Wow, independently?
Yeah, we are self-published this book, and
Wonderful.
so everything we did from David's interviews to the prints to Tom Fritz working on all the files for the printer and our designer that we worked with, all was done by us. And so we have to also go about the promotion and selling, but
Right.
here is the book.
It's a radio interview, so the people
But you can see
listening
it,
don't
right?
get to see it.
I
But
can see it, yeah, and we can put this on YouTube after so people could see it as well.
Okay.
oh, thank you.
Oh,
That's great.
that's beautiful. It's
The cover
art.
boy was here yesterday. We met him. His name is David, and he came over from Minneapolis to be part of this. And he's the
Oh,
perfect. The image on the cover is just the perfect guy. He looks like exactly what you'd expect a 1989 parking lot deadhead to look like.
yeah.
And it was, and my job was to talk to these people and find out who they are and stuff. And everybody had a unique and really sweet version of what this all means to them. Sometimes I would ask them, who are you? How did you get from there to there? But sometimes I would also ask them that line from a Grateful Dead song. Did it matter? Does it now? And so I've got some people to talk about what this all meant and what they learned from it. So the pictures are the story, but the captions and the bios that go in between them also tell you a lot about the Grateful Dead and the Grateful Dead culture. It's been an amazing year for me. This is the second coffee table book I've published this year.
Wow.
In August, Chronicle Books published a book called The Grateful Dead by Jim Marshall, stories and photos and stories from the formative years 1966 to 1977. Jim Marshall was a legendary photographer. He shot a lot of jazz photos and rock and roll. He shot at Woodstock. He shot the Allman Brothers Fillmore East cover, and he was just an amazing guy and a great character. And he shot the Grateful Dead. We went through more than 10,000 images for that book.
That's a lot.
And
Wow.
and it was the same thing though. After we chose the pictures, I got to talk to all these people about the images in them. I spent an amazing afternoon with Mountain Girl going through all these photos, and she had stories for every single one of them. You know, it's like the Grateful Dead went through all these experiences, but the people that were with them had those experiences too. So Jerry's significant other, Mountain Girl, had amazing stories to add to it. So these two books are photo books where the text supports them, and just it adds up to two like really important documents of the Grateful Dead and the Deadhead culture. It's just an honor and a privilege to be part of this thing. And these two books I'm just incredibly proud of.
We're super proud of you too. We
Oh,
really, I'm grateful to be able to talk to you today, David. You're a huge hero of mine. Everything you do with the archiving, with the love. You have a love for this band, just like Bill, I can tell.
I
Yeah,
really do. Yeah,
from what
thank
you're
you.
doing, it's like I think passion is how we, relate to people, and the passion doesn't seem to waver. We could listen to Fire on the Mountain 1,000 times, but there's so many different versions, and we're still grateful,
I,
aging
I
grateful.
absolutely, that is perfectly stated. I have been curating this music on the radio for more than 40 years, and I
Wow.
have never even for a moment been even slightly tired of it. The music
What?
is
Not
never,
once?
no, it just stays interesting. They kept each other interested, and
Yep.
that kept us interested all this time. And it's so thoroughly documented. There's so much music out there for us to listen to. Anybody becomes a deadhead now, they have access to the entire history to get up to speed, right?
Yeah.
Hey, we should mention the online for people that are listening that might want to find out more about the book and order a copy. We just last night created the new domain. AgingGratefullyBook.com will get you to the page where you can look at some of the images and place your order. And as I mentioned, we're signing all of the books. So every copy that gets shipped out of here will have the autographs of at least the two of us and possibly one or two of the other participants.
That's fantastic. Aginggratefully.com is that Aging Gratefully Book?
AgingGratefullyBook.com, yes.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. I love that it's up and running and then people can get it from anywhere if they're not here at Garcia's tonight. Um, Tell me both. You can start first, Dave, if you like. When did you get turned on? When did you jump on the bus? Who showed you the Grateful Dead? How did you get into it?
Well, I was a young singer songwriter wannabe in San Jose, California in 1972. And I was writing music and performing already by then. And a guy I went to high school with, we were writing songs together, and he started bugging me to go see the Grateful Dead. And I always tell this story because I felt like such an idiot when I finally heard them. I thought I wasn't going to like the Grateful Dead. I thought they were kind of a hard rock band. And I looked at this album covers, and they had a song called Cumberland Blues, and I'm not a big fan of the blues, you know. And they had a song called New Speedway Boogie, and I thought, oh my God, it's a boogie band. I don't care. That's, I'm not a ZZ Top fan, yada yada yada. And then they had a song called Ripple, and I went, oh great, a song about cheap wine. Forget about it. So he finally persuades me to go. And
Okay.
we took, of course, a heroic dose of LSD and had our designated driver to deliver us from San Jose to San Francisco. And we got there late because we had car trouble, and we wound up in the last row of Winterland. This is March 5th, 1972. It must have been 140 degrees up there under the ceiling. I was
Wow.
just blazing on acid and having a little bit of trouble connecting. But bits of it stuck with me, and it's the only time I ever saw Pigpen, and I can't say that I really got Pigpen because I was so out there. But
Yeah.
little bits of it stuck in my mind, and I had lunch with the guy that brought me, Donnelly. I had lunch with him a couple years ago, and he was in town, and I said, "How did we know? How did we know that we were going to go get in line and wait overnight to buy tickets and go see all of the shows the next time they came to town? How did we know that we were supposed to do that?" And he said, "Are you kidding? The day after we went to that first show, you went to the music store and bought every Grateful Dead thing you could find." So I had forgotten, but he said I just jumped in with both feet and got completely into that thing. And I did. I started playing Grateful Dead style music. And
Okay.
I moved to Berkeley in 74 and I met a bunch of guys that played Dead music. So I started playing that kind of music. uh, with those guys, and some of them I still play with. I had a gig with one of those guys that I first played with in '74. We played a show together in Berkeley a couple of weeks ago. So after that, I just was deeply into the Dead, and one of those guys I was in a band with uh, turned me on to the fact that there were bootleg recordings. So I started collecting all these, live concerts of the Dead and stuff.
Yeah.
So and then in '76 I started writing for music magazines. I'd always been a writer and I was interested in music, so I was like, do record reviews and get free records and get concert tickets and stuff. So it was a great way to sort of enrich myself as a musician. And I started meeting people, and I went to work for a magazine in Berkeley called BAM, and they put me in charge of their Grateful Dead column. So I started going to the Dead office and hanging out over there and picking up tour itineraries, and I started interviewing members of the band. And that led to getting a book contract. And my first book came out in '85, playing in the band, and that led to appearing on the K-Fog Deadhead Hour, which led to becoming a part of the team that put on the K-Fog Deadhead Hour, which led to my becoming the sole host and producer of the Deadhead Hour. Then other stations started calling and asking if they could carry it. So I went to the band and they said, "Yes, please, we trust you." So I started syndicating the Grateful Dead Hour without ever planning to. I never made any of these plans. It's an entirely improvised life.
Mm.
And 40 years later, I've produced box sets for them. They hired me to help create the Grateful Dead channel on Sirius satellite radio, etc. So I've just been up to my, hip deep in Grateful Dead for 40 years. It's been a wonderful thing, and because I think one of the reasons I had success with them as a journalist was that I was a musician, and I could speak to the musicians about how they make their music, and those guys all recognized that in me, and they sort of responded to me as a journalist because they knew that I spoke their language, and they found me useful in the sense that I could help explain them to the uncomprehending world. What is going on with this weird music?
Exactly.
Anyway,
It's
Bill's turn.
So, as a senior in high school, I got interested in photography. But leading up to that, late 60s, early 70s, I always had a lot of interest in music, all different types of music. And then as I became a photographer, I started volunteering for a little underground newspaper to be a photographer at concerts to get free tickets. And I would often get backstage passes, and I got to see some incredible groups from probably like 1974 up through the late 70s. And I hadn't seen the Grateful Dead yet, but I loved their music. And then 1980, a friend of mine said, "Hey, the Dead are playing at Alpine Valley, right down the road from us. Let's go see the band." And at that time, you could just walk up and buy a ticket and go in and sit on the lawn. And I was just blown away by the music. But again, the audience, the community just felt so good. And hanging out in the parking lot was just a blast. And I immediately started going to Dead shows after that. And every time they came to Alpine, I would be there for all 4 days, and I'd come down to Soldier Field and go to Deer Creek. I never did the tour because I still had to make a living as a
right.
photographer. And I still proceeded to do my artwork as well. So I was out photographing landscapes in the West and traveling all over. But my connection to the music really, really put together this whole project. And it's kind of cool to do something that you actually love. Whether you make a great living at it or not doesn't matter. It's like, I love this. I want to continue to do this. I paid for all my materials to do these photographs. I'm shooting large format film, which isn't cheap. But it's something I really wanted to do, whether it turned into a book or it just turned into these documents that someday somebody will look at and say, "This is pretty interesting." But, my interest with music just led from one thing to the next.
Absolutely. Thank you so much to both of you for sharing that, your stories on how you became immersed in the world of the Grateful Dead, quote unquote, deadheads. And I just love that, David, you said you didn't think you'd like it. A lot of things I think musically too, people think, "Ah, I'm not into it." And next thing you know, it blows your mind. And now it's your whole career, your improvised career.
Yeah, well,
something that
that's
you
true for
hated.
me. That was one of the things that I gathered from the interviews that I did with these people. Several people told me that same story. It's like one of the things about this is, how did you become a deadhead? It's very almost always, well, my big brother or my best friend's big brother or my older sister was in. Somebody turned you on to this thing. And various people said that same thing. It's like, with a name like that, I thought they were going to be like a death metal band or something.
100%.
And so that's that one this the acquisition story, the origin story is a really fun thing to gather from people. Like, how did you become a deadhead?
Oh, that's a good question. Same thing. And I went through my parents' collection of CDs back when you had BMG Music and you get CDs for a penny.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
They were, they were just buying CDs and they didn't know. They heard a couple things and yeah, Grateful Dead's cool, but they never got into it because they said it wasn't played much on the radio. So they knew
Yeah.
Touch of Grey, but they had the very best of or whatever with like the chest or whatever, and it looked very heavy metal. It was like the
That
rib.
Skeletons from the Closet record?
Yeah, I guess that's
Yeah.
what it is.
Had
And
a skeleton on the front, yeah.
yeah, and I'm like a little kid going, my parents don't like this. Lou Reed, Rock and Roll Animal, they're not punks. Like, what is this? And yeah, my brother started listening to it. He showed me Till the Morning Comes. It was like a live record he found. That's how it started. And it was just it took off from there. All my friends in high school were talking about it. They were going to Bonnaroo, the first Bonnaroo's, got to see The Dead at Bonnaroo, and I didn't know what I was in for. I didn't know what 100,000 Deadheads felt like, all together, 80,000 people, and smoking weed with older people and having a wonderful time. And just, it's just changed my whole life. It is literally why I do what I do here at the radio and how I promote shows because the Grateful Dead have taught me you go to a show, you fall over, somebody will pick you up, somebody will take care of you.
Yeah.
This family is here, whether you knew them for an hour or your whole life.
That is so true. And that, again, that's another one of the themes that came from my conversations with these people. I also want to mention, unrelated to this book, a woman named Lonnie Fraser made a film a few years ago called Box of Rain. And I've taught it in my Stanford class. I've told people about it because it's like one of those perfect deadhead stories. She had a traumatic experience when she was young, and a friend of hers said, you need to get out of town for a while. I'm going to see the Grateful Dead at Red Rocks. I'll buy you a ticket if you'll come with me in the car. And she talked about taking this trip with her friend and how she came out there to Colorado and was immediately welcomed into this huge, warm family and stuff. So, and that's how she became a deadhead. And I loved the film, and I've just turned people onto it because it's sort of one of thousands of stories like that of people who found. I always quote John Denver, too, of all people. And there's a line in Rocky Mountain High that I think describes this perfectly. People say, coming home to a place they'd never been before.
Ooh, that's like nail on the head right there, really and
Yeah,
truly. Yeah.
yeah. So that's what this thing has always been, and it's always been more than just the music. But to me, if the music wasn't great, none of the rest would matter. We kept coming back because they made music that we were profoundly attracted to. They did it differently every day. They made it worth our while to go to three shows in a row because it wasn't like an Eagles show where you've seen one, you've seen the whole tour.
Right.
Because you'd have to go to three shows if you wanted to hear your favorite song. You didn't know which night they were going to do it.
Yeah.
So they inadvertently created brilliant marketing for themselves by making their product so attractive to the narrow band of humanity that is genetically suited to appreciating this music. You know,
It's true. It's true. I mean, there's that book about everything I learned about the business, the music business I learned from the Grateful Dead, and
yeah.
it's true. Their model of not only reaching people in a community way, um, have taught people how to like actually run a business. Like it's insane how many ways the Grateful Dead have touched American culture.
And I'm glad you brought that book up too. Barry Barnes is the author of that book, and he spoke to my Stanford class. I just finished another quarter. I've been teaching a class about the Grateful Dead for Stanford continuing studies. I've done it for 2 years now, and I'm doing it again in the spring quarter. And Barry Barnes wrote that book, Everything I Know About Business I Learned from the Grateful Dead. And it's true. He talked about that the Grateful Dead improvised their whole way of doing things, and in the course of doing that, they invented a way of marketing music that was emulated after that. Fish, Widespread Panic, Mo, that whole generation, Dave Matthews Band, a lot of bands from that immediate, the next jam band wave, directly adopted the Grateful Dead's way of connecting with their audiences, doing, being kind to your fans, trusting your fans, giving them stuff, letting them trade your tapes. And by the way, along the way, the entire music business now does things the Grateful Dead's way. Because remember, in the 60s and 70s, the Grateful Dead didn't sell very many records. They made their living performing live. The rest of the music business was all about putting out a record and then touring to support the record. People would go to the concert, then they'd go to the record store and buy the album, right? That wasn't how the Grateful Dead thing worked. The Grateful Dead's meat and potatoes was the performance. They made records for the joy of making records and because there was some money in it or whatever. It was something that you did. But now, we live in the Spotify era and nobody buys music anymore. So the whole model of the music industry has been stood on its head. And now bands go out and tour to make a living, and their album is a calling card for their tour instead of vice versa. And that's what the Grateful Dead were doing all along. So that's what Barry Barnes was talking about in that book, that the Grateful Dead created a way of dealing with your customers that was highly successful for them and worth emulating for other people. So I'm really glad you brought his book up too. That's a really, really smart reference.
Yeah, absolutely. That book is really something, and it's helped me a lot in what I do. And I think anybody could learn a thing or two about it. Like you said, everybody's kind of taking a page out of the Grateful Dead's book, whether they know it or not, in the music industry. Touring is the only way to make money now, merch a little bit,
Right.
but to make a record these days, it's a beautiful thing, but it ends up on Spotify and loses the quality of the music, and they're not paying the artists, and it's a difficult thing. So yeah, I mean, the Grateful Dead's theory holds up after all these years.
Yeah. I get these bizarre royalty statements from the online music services. My TikTok royalties were less than a penny this last quarter. So, I mean, I'm a
One,
very, very minor recording artist anyway, but
sure, but less
it,
than a penny.
yeah,
Mm.
it's a weird world to be a musician because in fact, I'm sort of in the mail order book business. I sell a lot more books than I do CDs these days. So I'm very happy with, being able to do all the things that I get to do. And I still can play music because I go out and play the gigs again. And so that's how I can afford to make records. But,
Absolutely.
it's all another thing about an improvisational life is it teaches you to pay attention to what's going on around you and have an honest relationship with your circumstances and don't try to force reality to conform to a model that doesn't exist anymore
Mm.
and don't expect people to behave in, ways that perfectly suit your needs. You got to just interact with the world around you. And I find I think being an improvisational musician is a useful model for how you interact in the world just in general. Be open to stuff instead of trying to force the world into doing things your way.
Yeah,
Very wise words from David Gans and Bill Lemke here. Go ahead,
one
Bill.
thing I wanted to mention is when Jerry died in 1995, I pretty much figured that the photographs that I had done would just end up in my vault. I never thought 30 years later we would be sitting here having an interview with you about a book about deadheads. But it just goes to show the legs that these people have and this music has. It just continues. It just continues to roll.
It
So
does. And you guys speak of this improvised life, from the Grateful Dead, from not expecting this. And it reminds me of speaking to Donna Jean Godshaw, who I got to talk to um, not almost a year ago when Phil passed. I talked to her and she was so
Uh-huh.
kind and so
Wouldn't
sweet.
be the greatest.
She was so amazing. Getting to
Yeah.
speak to her was like, wow, she's just in another realm. She's just beautiful. But watching these videos about her talking about the Grateful Dead and thinking it was not for her either, that she was
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, right. I'm not going to see this band. Y'all are on drugs. I'm not going to do that. And then she did it. She went to Winterland like you, and she made the experiment. She said, let me try it. I'm going to go totally sober. I'm going to try it out. And I love where she says it was a man. She didn't even say it was a manifestation, but she said out loud, the next time I sing, I'm going to be singing with these guys. And she did, as she started in Muscle Shoals with Elvis and things like that. So this magic is really, really prevalent in the Grateful Dead community, through the Deadhead community, through the community of the audience, as well as the band and everyone who's involved.
Another manifestation of that is that I can go someplace in the country and step up onto a stage with a bunch of people I've never met before and have a musical conversation that's of decent quality and can be a lot of fun. That's happened to me countless times over the 25 plus years I've been touring. It just happened to me Monday night. These guys that are in a band called Chicken Wire Empire out there in Milwaukee,
Oh yeah.
they played an opening set. Four members of that band, or members of that band. I don't know who all was in which band, but they just played a really really great opening set before Bill and I did our presentation of the book, and then I got up and played a set, and they joined me at the end of it, and we just had a fabulous jam. It's like all of us were like, oh, let's play together again sometime, and the people who love this music, it's a collective, collaborative lifestyle and a collaborative way of doing things. I'm a solo performer of necessity, but I'm also a very, very happy ensemble player, and I love jamming with people. And I've had this great experience so many times over the years because people who love this music love to play this music with anybody. And so you can have just a really, really sweet, ecstatic jam. And we happened to do it in front of a full house in the back room of a brewery. There
No
were
way.
200 people screaming and yelling at the end of the set, and we had to play an encore. That's a
Yeah.
fairly rare experience in my career, but it was
Wow.
just a delight. And that kind of thing happens because we who love this music love it fiercely and love to play it with others. So it's been a great way to be in the world all these years.
A great way to travel. It's a great way to see the world. There's people everywhere that know about this music, and that's why this book, Aging Gratefully, I think is going to be so interesting to pick up and read through and see these faces because, we're all kind of in this same kind of, I don't know, it's not a club. It's not a club that you're not invited to because I've heard that before too, right? You got to get into it. No, you can just
Yeah,
be whoever you are,
that's
show up
right.
as is, and we are welcoming each other in with open arms. Who are you? I want to get to know you. I feel like there's so much to know about each other, and this is a great way to do it with this book.
Couple of the people that we talked to in the book talked about there are a couple of people that were kids in the when their first photo was taken, and
Yeah,
then they're
3 years old.
yeah, there was
No
a woman that was
way.
there when she was three, and she talked to me about what her job was. One of them said, "Well, my job was to be cute and pull people over to the booth and all." But the reason I mention it right now is that the parents talked about how being on tour, on their days off, they would take their kids to national parks and stuff like that. That for them, touring wasn't just the show and it wasn't just the vending that they were doing. It was showing their kids the planet. That was another part of it. A lot of hippies are like nature freaks and stuff. So they would camp in wildernesses between tours, and they would see the world in between the gigs and stuff. So it's a wonderful culture to be part of. We can talk about it forever, you can tell.
I know we could. It's true. I've been all around this country just from like you guys spoke of Utah. I got to see, Arches National Park because I want to go see further at Red Rocks. Started with a fish run and then was like, wait, further plays a month later. Why don't we just tour the country until
Yeah.
and it was the coolest trip I've ever taken. A whole month on the road, saw everything from Chicago to going down the one in California, and then even manifested seeing Phil Lesh at his club. I said, I'm going to buy a dress. I'm going to meet this man. And sure enough, he was just sitting there at Terrapin Crossroads watching his son play. And we got to go to a Harvest House party and eat food and see him perform with amazing people. Like this culture brings people together. It makes you go outside of your comfort zone just to chase the music, but also to have these side quests where I'm in Mars on at Arches National Park. Like, I didn't even know this existed in this world.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I'm totally with those people. I swear that's just so amazing. Bill, I want to hear about when you were originally taking these photos. Were you set up at shows and just telling people to come take a
Yeah,
pic?
basically,
Yeah.
I set up a portable studio. I had like a canopy top with this big canvas that I had painted to look like tie dye. And I would just ask people as they walk by, would you mind sitting down so I could photograph you? And I would get their name, I would get an address if they actually had one, and I would send them a print after that. And I thought I could stay in touch with them, but then things changed dramatically, and nobody lives in those places anymore. But yeah, it was basically a portable studio. And then at one point, there was some bans on having vendors in the parking lot selling T-shirts and stuff. And thanks to Dennis McNally, he made it possible for me to continue doing photographs. And security would come through, tell people put those T-shirts away, and they'd look at me and say, "Go ahead, do what you're doing." And it was great.
Dang.
And I'd spend half an hour with people. Maybe we'd sit and have a beer together. But when we reconnect 35 years later, it's like old friends getting together. We're hugging and talking about, oh yeah, what'd you do in the last 35 years?
I gotta
Some
look
of the
at
It's been
people,
great.
some of the people that I interviewed talked about, there were people that didn't, that outlaws, and there was various people that were doing various sketchy things on tour. So there were people that wouldn't go get their picture taken because that would meant whatever. And various people, couple people talked about that. Well, we were walking by and saw this, but he's way too elaborate a thing. This isn't just some cop setting up a trap because this is like he's got real equipment. He's got a real backdrop. So people figured he was legit because of the elaborateness of his setup. But a lot
right.
of people were like they just slunk by because I
Yeah.
don't want to be seen here.
Well, and my camera was not a traditional 35 millimeter camera. I'm working with the old type with the bellows, and I have to put a dark cloth over my head to look at the back of the camera. And I'm
Old school.
shooting big sheets of film in film holders. And so
Wow.
to go to that length to possibly arrest somebody would be a bit of a stretch. But I had some work hanging in Chicago in 2015 when they did their last show at Soldier Field.
Oh yeah.
And this Chris, who's also in the book, asked me to bring some photographs and hang them. She had a after party. And people came up to me and said, "I remember you. I remember seeing you in the parking lot, and there was no way I was letting you take my picture."
Now
And it
they
was,
regret it, right?
Why
and
do
they
you
did.
take my picture? Why?
Well, and they regretted it. They said, "I wish I would have had a photograph from back then. I have no record of that." And so, it was nice to hear stuff like that as well.
That's really beautiful.
Talking about running into people in odd places, I was in a market in southern France, a farmer's market, and I saw a guy with a fish shirt on. And, I don't know if he's French, I don't know if he's American, but it turns out he was from New England, but we connected on the Grateful Dead. He was also a Deadhead. So, just the other side of the world, and you run into somebody like that.
You could be
Uh,
anywhere. That's really great.
I won't spoil the story, but there's somebody we had to go to Thailand to photograph. You'll have to get the book to find out the reason why.
Oh, that's really cool. Thailand, all the way there to do that, and you did that.
We did that because he wasn't allowed to come back here, but the story's in the book and it's good.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that guy talked to me for 90 straight minutes. An amazing story. Yeah.
That's
I
amazing.
there's sometimes when you interview people, there are people that you don't have to ask very many questions of. You just ask them one and they start talking. This guy was one of those. He was a total self-starter. He was fantastic, and his story is quite wonderful. We don't have the entire 90-minute interview in there. It would have been half the
Yeah.
book. But we got the gist of his experience, and it's utterly unique in relation to the rest of this.
And we spent several days in Bangkok with him and he showed us around town. It was a real fun time. And actually on my website, I think there's a video that he put together, a little interview the two of us did together. And is that right, Carmen? Yeah, it's on my website as well.
Yeah, I
It's
think
kind
I
of fun.
watched it this morning. It was really
Yeah,
cool. You guys were just chilling. Yeah, you could hear the sounds of Thailand behind you, and it's like, oh,
yeah,
you guys are really there. This is cool. And then you
yeah.
also spend some time there, which is really fun. So again, getting to travel, getting to see the world, all because of this community that's been created
Oh,
out of
yeah.
and music. David, I had a question about interviews. When you interview someone, how do you just record it and then transcribe it with like a certain program? How do you make it to print, basically?
This for this project, I used Zoom. The Zoom became the most amazing tool when the pandemic started. I started living my life on Zoom. Basically, I use Zoom to do my I have my radio show on Sirius XM on Sunday afternoons. I did that show from the house concert from my host's bedroom just through Zoom. So I record the interviews on Zoom, and on my Macintosh there's a program. There's a lot of online transcription services. You feed your audio to it and it sends you back a thing. There's an inexpensive app that I use called Audio Hijack on my Mac that I used to use to grab audio off of DVDs and websites and stuff like that. Well, they sent coincidentally earlier in the year they sent out a software update and they said we've got our transcription module is complete now. It works. So I took the upgrade and I started using it and it works really really well. That technology of voice to text has gotten really really good over the years. So I all you do is you record the interview, then you set up this audio hijack and you play it back and it spits out a text file. It's undifferentiated, a solid block of text, but you just go through it and you separate out the questions and the answers. So it's just, I used to have to do that. When I was a music journalist in the 80s, the 70s and 80s, I would record an interview on a cassette, either on the phone or in person. Then I would go home and I had a cassette machine with a foot pedal. And you'd play it back and you'd type and then you'd stop and you'd type until you caught up and then you'd hit the pedal again and you'd play a few seconds of it and you'd type it and it had a backspace switch, so if you want to go back and hear the last 30 seconds. It was an incredibly tedious process.
Wow.
And now it's so easy. Then you just go in and you clean up the text and there it is, and then you edit out the parts you don't need. So process, the tools to do this have gotten better and better and better over the years. And I'm going to stop well short of that thing of using the AI to write the goddamn article.
Yeah.
I'm going to continue to do the thinking part of it myself. Thank you very much. But the tedious part has been taken care of by modern tools. And I recommend Audio Hijack to anybody with a Mac who does anything with audio because it's a really, really helpful tool for pulling audio out of your stuff, computers and whatever, websites.
That's really, really cool. Thanks for that tip. I mean, do you ever get the phantom foot pedal that when you're going back now, you feel like you got to hit the.
No, I very happily said goodbye to that old
Yeah.
antique. I might have the machine still in my closet though, the cassette deck. It
See,
might still be there, but I use that thing every dang day of my life in my during my magazine writing years. I have to mention the website again for ordering Bill's book.
yeah.
It's aginggratefullybook.com. And we should also mention again that we're coming to Garcia's tonight, right?
Tonight, Garcia. So what's the setup? It's going to be kind of a book talk, kind of Q&A or hangout kind of
Yeah.
thing first. And
Well, we
then,
got Bill and Carmen put together a slideshow.
oh,
So we're going to
cool.
show the slides, and then I will sit on stage and talk about the project, how he did it, and look at the photos and stuff. And then we'll sit at a table and sign books, and then I'm going to play a set with my dear friends.
I love this. This is so cool. You're listening to WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM, The Wizard. We are on the line with David Gans and Bill Lemke. Thank you guys so much for spending time with us. I know you got to travel today and come to Chicago and get all ready for this awesome event, but it's really cool that you made time for us this morning.
I
Well, thank
appreciate.
you.
Yeah, thank you for reaching out to us, and I love your call letters. You got to be the wizard. That is a very cool
That's
radio
crazy. We
station
got
name.
wizards all over the place.
Yeah. Oh, look at that. Excellent.
There's wizard hats. So yeah, if you guys are ever in Chicago proper early and want to come hang out, this place is so cool. It's a fun place to check
Thank you
out.
so much for having
Yeah,
us.
thank
You're
you.
welcome. Thank you
We
both. It's
appreciate
really an honor to have you both, and can't wait to see the book in person tonight. So we'll see you at
it. Okay.
Garcia's this evening.
And you'll be there.
I will be there.
Oh,
Excellent.
great.
Well,
Can't
we
wait
look
to meet
forward.
you then. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yep, we'll have to say hello. Thank you guys so much. Safe travels and keep that
Thank you.
spirit alive. Thanks,
Thank
All
guys.
you.
right.
You
Thanks.
too.
Have a
Bye.
wonderful day.
You too.
Thanks. It's WZRD Chicago, 88.3 FM.